Rick Johnson is the founder of Better Dads, a fathering skills program designed to equip men to be more engaged in the lives of their children. He's also developed, don't go away you single moms, a popular seminar for single mothers and other women raising boys. It's called Courageous Moms, Raising Boys to Become Good Men. Rick's latest book, we've been enjoying this, haven't we, Jim? The Power of a Man, using your influence as a man of character. He's here from Oregon, where they don't have snow, and where he and his wife Suzanne have raised 2 adult children who won't leave home. But Rick, you say that you came to this role of fatherhood armed only with a fork in the land of soup. Not a good plan.
That's a good point, and I think like a lot of men in our culture, especially in the U.S., maybe in Canada, I don't know, that weren't raised with a father, maybe didn't have a good role model for a father. We grow up angry, we grow up anxious, we grow up with anxiety because we don't really understand what our roles as a man, as a father, as a husband are. And so we have a tendency then to experience these kinds of things. And an interesting thing that I've noticed over the years, what happens with a lot of men is that when we do experience fear, when we do feel inadequate in the roles that we're in, we have a tendency to leave. And so we see that
just
in the U.S. To walk away and leave rather than feel the humiliation of failure, we'd rather leave. And so I think we have a lot of problems and issues with fatherlessness in the U.S., primarily because men don't understand their roles as fathers and husbands.
Now you grew up with a stepdad.
I grew up in an alcoholic home with a stepfather.
Who, as you say, was emotionally detached. In a sense, you were emotionally fatherless.
Absolutely.
And your biological father, where was he?
I actually met my biological father when I was 24, and we have a great relationship now. It's been a blessing in my life to have that positive male role model in my life, even as an adult, to bless me and to tell me that he's proud of me, that he loves me. It's been a big factor in my life and growing into my authentic masculinity.
24, how did that happen?
That's a good question. I got out of the service and he had contacted me, and
You were in the Navy.
I was in the Navy, yeah.
And he had found you.
He had actually been in touch apparently while I was growing up with my mother, and
You didn't know
didn't
that?
allow him to contact me. So
What was that like, the moment you first laid eyes on your biological dad?
it was a very interesting experience. I met him at a hotel, and I came and opened the door, and it was almost like opening and looking in a mirror, an older version of myself looking in a mirror. I mean, there was absolutely no question that
You are
that
his
this was
son.
exactly. So
And were you shy, awkward?
I was a little bit uncomfortable at first, I think. But I
real
think we
men hug?
both yearned. Well, they absolutely do, and real men need to hug and kiss their kids, and we all have this need for physical affection from our fathers, and when we don't get it, we'll accept unhealthy masculinity. We see masculine affection. We see girls that accept sex in the backseat of cars for love, and we see women that are with abusive men because of that drive and need for masculine affection in their lives.
You, and by the way, I have not read your book. And normally I don't interview someone if I
I
haven't read their
couldn't
book.
leave him out.
Yeah,
I mean, he just loves Daddy.
So in a sense, I'm interviewing blind here, but I was going through it a bit before the show. In your book, you talk about the effects of fatherlessness on boys. And there's a number of points you make that are well researched. But again and again, fatherless boys especially seem to be adrift. Whether it's, you're talking to 9 out of 10 prisoners who have a poor father figure, if a father at all. You're talking about girls who are looking for love in the wrong places because of no father. But the boys, higher instance of unemployment, incarceration, non-involvement with their own children.
Leaving home.
90% of runaway children are from fatherless homes. 3 to 4 teen suicides, fatherless homes. A father is a real anchor.
Well, fathering is huge, and the problem is that our culture doesn't promote fatherhood or masculinity as being important. And it's absolutely important. It's key. It's fundamental. We work a lot with fatherless boys. We have mentoring programs for fatherless boys, and we see all of those things in generations that happen. We tend to emulate what's modeled for us, and so we see generations of moms that were single mom. Grandma was a single mom. Mom's a single mom. Grandfather was in prison, dad was in prison, now the son is in prison. But we see other things with these fatherless boys too. They lack self-confidence. They're real passive. They're not willing to take risks, which I think authentic masculinity needs to do in order to bless other people's lives. We need to step out of our comfort zone from time to time. And so, and we see them, because they're afraid to take risks, every time they fail, they expect to be rescued by a woman, maybe. And it causes a lot of problems later on in life. Again, they repeat these cycles that have been modeled for them.
You quote Norman Mailer, a lot of great quotes in this book. If you love movies, they're all in here too, pop culture.
Not a bastion of Christianity, probably.
But it's all relevant. Norman Mailer said, because there is very little honor left in American life, there is a certain built-in tendency to destroy masculinity in American men.
I think people are, because of the culture and the way that we have been raised the last 20, 30 years, I think people are afraid of authentic masculinity. You know, I talk to men all the time, and I tell them about the power that God has given men. And it's not this power of being bigger or stronger than our wives or kids. It's just generational power to impact people's lives for hundreds of years, just by the things we do or don't do today. And we don't recognize that. And so when you have great power, it comes with great responsibility. But if we don't educate ourselves about that power and understand how it works, we're not able to use it effectively.
It's very interesting that Ruth Kennard just said that out of weakness and distress, God called her to go and speak to women about being what God has called them to be. Mm-hmm. And really, you were well along in what you call a bumpy road of fatherhood, when God reached down and provided what you needed and gave you a vision to help others.
Really did. I actually didn't become a Christian, a believer, until I was 40 years old, and had a successful business, and I guess what the world would consider to be a successful life. I had all the trappings, and I was just hugely dissatisfied. It seemed like the more I accomplished, the less gratifying it was, and because I didn't know men, I didn't know men I looked up to, men that I respected and admired. I had acquaintances, I didn't really have any friends. I kind of looked back through history at some men that I admired and the accomplishments to see what they had. And
a year of research?
A year of research to see what these men had. And the interesting part is they were all Christians, which was a shock to my worldview, because I was raised in a home that felt that religion was a crutch, and Christianity, especially Christians, were all hypocrites. And so I spent a year researching the gospel of Jesus Christ, trying to disprove it. And actually, after a year of research, I come to the conclusion that it was true, and that I had to accept.
Who were these guys that you admired?
People like the founding fathers of the U.S., the Constitution, Abraham Lincoln, Leonardo da Vinci, people like that men that had accomplished great things with their life. And looking back at their life, it was very interesting that their spiritual beliefs, I think, were the foundation of those accomplishments that they had made in the lives of, to lift the lives of other people up and make an impact for generations.
Now, you come to faith at 40. You were already a dad. You were married. You had kids. Mm-hmm. How did you do it fathering?
How were you doing the dad thing?
Yeah, as you know, as a guy who'd not had it modeled for him as a kid.
And that was one of the challenges, Jim, that I struggled with, is that I knew I wasn't the kind of dad I wanted to be, or the kind of dad that my kids deserved. But really all I knew is what kind of a dad I didn't want to be, what had been modeled for me. I didn't really understand what positive role models of a father were. And so without other men, without having been to classes or read books, and at that time it didn't seem like there was a lot of information out there on that particular subject. And so I struggled a lot. I mean, at that point in time, I did struggle a lot.
And you
struggled with anger. Again, because I felt inadequate. Men, a lot of times when we feel humiliated, when we feel inadequate, we cover it with a secondary emotion like anger that we're more comfortable with. And so I found myself reacting to situations instead of being proactive in my fathering.
And this is the illustration of what you say in your book. Bloodlines get contaminated with emotional toxins. Like father, like son. You found yourself reacting in the ways that you had experienced.